you're kind of here with us. We're on retreat today, but we've got a brand new, wonderful conversation with Trent Horn, and we're gonna take some of his patron questions in the second hour. In the first hour, Trent gave a wonderful talk at the Catholic Answers Conference this year. Well, he gives a wonderful talk every year, but he's a big superstar there. Everybody loves him, and he does a great job. But this time, he kind of went a little risky. He risked our ire by telling us 4 kinds of bad Christians, because he risked our ire because some of us could identify ourselves in these 4 types of bad Christians. Trent Horn is an apologist here at Catholic Answers, author of all kinds of wonderful books, including the single most popular book ever published by the Catholic Answers Press, Why We're Catholic. And, of course, Council of Trent is what people know him for, where he is both irenic and persuasive. And I looked up those vocabulary words in order to say something about Trent today. Hello, Trent Horn. Thanks for being here.
I am astounded by your verbosity, Cy.
Oh, muchas gracias.
And your magnanimous introduction.
Oh, well, don't be lugubrious. Oh, I don't even actually know what that one means. Sorry, I maybe messed it up.
I always thought that had something to do with peanuts. Like, don't be legumious, like a legume.
It does, yes. Legume. It does have a little bit of
It sounds like a gooey peanut treat.
And that's what it feels like to be lugubrious as well.
You're a gooey melted peanut.
Yeah. Why did you want to talk to us about 4 kinds of bad Christians? What got into you?
So for the conference, I was on the plane flying to San Diego, and I typed into ChatGPT, "Hi ChatGPT, I really need to wow them at this year's conference," and I sort of put things off. What would be a good topic? And it just spat this right out for me. Really? Unbelievable.
So ChatGPT's writing your content now, huh?
No, but I think I wouldn't be surprised if there's people who are writing content that sounds a little Trent Hornish, because ChatGPT reads my things. I see people, by the way, who make parodies and stuff related to me, and it always is a little bit uncanny valley, especially when they take video clips of me and get me to say things I never said. It's amusing and terrifying at the same time. I don't know if that's happened to you yet.
No, it has not. I'm not a big media star, but I really don't like it, because I don't look forward to that day where I will see myself saying something. I don't know. I see myself saying dumb things all the time. I don't mind if they do that, but if I see myself saying something that's contrary to the faith, or it's going to bug me. That's really
fortunately, Cy, at least at this stage, when they make stuff like that, it just looks like somebody wearing a Cy Kellett suit is saying that kind of stuff. Yeah. So it's more scary than heretical or threatening. But no, I had been thinking in my head. I got this idea. I was thinking about Wayne Brittenden had a political compass that he created back in like 2001. And you see it all the time where people sort of like, where do you fall on the political compass, your political views? And there's different kinds of, you have far left, you have like a spectrum, like far left, far right, but the political compass has 2 axes. So for the political compass, you have one vertical axis, which is, do you think government should be authoritarian? Like, hey, the government's telling everybody what to do. Or should government be more kind of libertarian? It's kind of more hands-off. And then, do you think government should implement liberal economic policies, like more of a welfare state, generous entitlement programs, or do you think it should have more conservative, hands-off kinds of economic policies? So when you have that, you can slot people into different things and see where they kind of fit amongst each other. But it's easy to pick the extremes on something like that. So if you are far left economic and authoritarian, that's Soviet communism. If you are far left libertarian, you're basically like a socialist, like an anarchist type person, like a far left anarchist. If you are far right economics and very libertarian, well, you're just the really, really crazy libertarians at the annual convention, the ones that people are like, why is he wearing a boot on his head running for president of the United States of America? But all right, whatever it may be. Then finally, if you're far right economically and very authoritarian, a lot of people like to put the Nazi party there, but actually they're the National Socialists. They're more at the top of the graph in the middle, because they're still closer to collectivism and socialism. I picked over there, you're basically would be like kind of like a monarchy that's very pro-capitalist, or maybe like societies run by a dystopian corporation, basically.
Oh, yeah, right, yeah.
Which in my talk at the conference, I referenced Omnicorp, which I hope our listeners will know what I'm referring to.
Is that a Detroit company, Omnicorp? Are they based
Your move, creep.
Yeah, okay.
Dead or alive, you're coming with me. One of Peter Weller's finest roles, RoboCop. If RoboCop is too Gen X reference for you, Wall-E would be, by and large, Wall-E would be maybe another example of a society run by a dystopian corporation. The point is, you can easily find the extremes there. So I thought, okay, what if you could do that to the Christian life? And I picked two values. So the vertical axis would be conforming to society. At the top is somebody who they just want everybody in society to like them. They conform to everything that's acceptable in modern society, highly conformative. The bottom of the axis is, imagine it's like a grid in front of you. The bottom of the axis would be anti-conformity. If majority of people like it, you don't like it. If majority of people say, yeah, that probably happened in history, your first instinct is that's probably a conspiracy theory. If a lot of people like it, you're suspicious of it. So conformity and anti-conformity. And then the horizontal axis is morality.
Oh.
And so on the right end of the spectrum would be moral rigor. You're highly, highly morally rigorous, which can be a bad thing. We'll get into that. Some people think, well, what's wrong with that? Well, it can be a bad thing. Rigorism is an error like laxity. And then left is morally lax, like you really let a lot of stuff go, even things that Christians and non-Christians agree on. But you're not as concerned about upholding all of the moral doctrines. So you put that out in a framework, and then you get the four corners. So you would have, and we can break them down later. But the corners would be, morally lax and conforms to society, morally rigorous and conforms to society, morally lax and is very anti-conformity, and morally lax and is morally rigorous and very anti-conformity. Oh. And those are a lot. And so I didn't include like the bad Christians, like, heresies. Obviously heresy is a bad thing. We can do a whole show just on that. I found these values were very helpful in sorting out, like, oh yeah, when I think of someone who embarrasses me and identifies as a Christian, they usually fall into one of these extreme zones.
But they can all be Christians in the sense of all confessing Jesus, but they just they're not like Christians who are like just syncretists or something like that. You're staying away from all that. You're talking about these are people that could reasonably all be called Christians, but they are going at it four completely different ways.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So they find a kind of abuse or an error, and so it sends them off on a wrong path, even though there's truth in various elements. Yeah. That's why you always want to try to get to the center of my grid, have a perfect balance between rigor and laxity and conformity and anti-conformity. But that's like balancing on a pin on a very sharp cone. It's very easy to fall off the cone and roll down into one of these corners.
Yeah. So this is, in a certain way, it's kind of like a double Aristotelian take or Aquinas take, that you're looking for the golden mean here. You're looking for the thing between the two extremes.
Yeah, and so we've got four extremes.
Yeah,
so it's
you've doubled it up.
Double means. Aristotle would say, golden mean, double golden mean, and then if you lose that, physical challenge.
Really?
To be a to be a virtuous person, you have to survive the physical challenge, or you get slimed.
Where does feats of strength come in all? Is that part of physical challenges?
It would depend. A lot of times, it's just climbing up a very slippery hill. But Double Dare, another older millennial Gen X reference for everybody.
But it is there is a thing about it's somehow we roll towards extremes naturally. Or I don't know if that's a consequence of the fall or something, but virtue is very rarely at the extreme. Virtue is usually like kindness, for example. You can be you have no kindness in you and you're a jerk. On the other end, you could have an excess of kindness where you're kind of a weirdo who makes everybody uncomfortable. So every virtue, it needs to be properly balanced. It needs to find that center point.
Yeah. And I think what happens a lot with the virtues, I mean, Martin Luther King Jr. was asked about this. He's like, people asked him, are you an extremist? And he said, well, there's nothing wrong necessarily being an extremist. Like, there's nothing wrong with being an extremist for love. Like, you were extremely dedicated towards loving other people. But I think a lot of times with these virtues, when they become extremes, the meaning of the virtue is basically lost. Like someone who is extremely, extremely kind, because they allow people to suffer so much, they're not even really kind anymore. We would just call them sentimental. We would just say that they very much appeal to people's sentiments and don't want people to feel bad, but they have lost the essence of what kindness is. So a lot of these things, like even I'm going to be 100% temperate. I'm going to be extremely temperate. I'm going to fully deny myself. Eventually, it's not even temperance anymore. It can be turned into like a disordered kind of asceticism or an imbalanced, unhealthy life. I find when it becomes extreme, it's just the virtue in name only.
All right, Trent Horn is our guest. We're going to talk about 4 kinds of bad Christians. He gave you the basic grid layout, but now I assume he's going to name names. I assume he's going to put people on this chart. And is that correct? Are you going to?
I did in a recent an episode last month.
You did?
I discussed this.
Oh,
and I did name names, Catholic and Protestant. So I'm not. And actually, I had a lot of comments in the 30% of my channel audience are Protestant Christians and Orthodox mixed in there, and they were very happy with this framework and found it to be very helpful. And so I could say, yeah, here's where I could find. I'm not going to gang up. I can see this or that in here and try to just be fair, but I call them like I see them.
All right. So the 4 types of bad Christians. One of the things you can do on this is you can find out, as Trent talks about them, where do I fit on this? Where do I fit on this grid? And am I in a healthy place or in an unhealthy place? And it's always good to ask ourselves those kind of questions, and things that help us to answer those kind of questions are really valuable. So we'll get into that with Trent right after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Stay with us for more Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Magnificat. Published monthly, Magnificat features texts of daily Mass, prayers, articles, meditations, art commentaries, and more, in step with the liturgical rhythm of the Church, on the web at magnificat.com.
The EWTN home video highlight for October is They Might Be Saints, Father Michael McGivney. Miracle hunter Michael O'Neill follows the trail of Father Michael McGivney, founder of the Knights of Columbus and America's first parish priest to be beatified. This documentary explores the miraculous cure that led to Father McGivney's beatification. Order your DVD at EWTNRC.com or call 1-800-854-6316.
Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host. Our guest, Trent Horn, this hour. And he's got a grid system. Trent Horn has developed a grid system for finding out if you're a good Christian or a bad Christian, or at least helping to find out whether you're a good Christian or a bad Christian. Yeah. Go ahead, Trent.
And I also want to make clear what I said in my episode is we are all tempted towards these extremes. None of us is perfect. We all, James 3:2 says we all stumble, make many small mistakes. So I'm not putting this out there as like, oh, I'm the perfect one and here's all the bad people. I put it out there as in, I see where I can fall into these different tendencies and try to be guarded to avoid that. We all should be able to do that.
Yeah, because I thought maybe when you started this, one of the 4 kinds of bad Christians was going to be podcaster, but you didn't have that on there.
Oh, well, what's funny is you can find them in all 4 quadrants.
Okay, all right.
All 4 quadrants.
All
so
right.
I'm sure there's a podcaster in them.
All right, so if you're thinking of a grid, a 2-dimensional grid, a square, so to speak, and we're trying to place people on this square, one axis is conformity. How much do you like to conform? And the other axis is more morality. Do I have these correct?
Yeah, it helps me put it in my head. The vertical is conform and anti-conform, and the morality is the right side is morally rigorous and the left side is morally lax.
Okay, all right. So let's get into this. Maybe give us some names and
yes. Well, we'll start with the first one. So that would be the upper left quadrant. That would be you are highly conforming to society and you also tend to be morally lax. And that would be your classic cafeteria Christian.
Yeah.
Think about the kind of person that they're Christian. They like saying they're Christian, and they like sharing with people aspects of the Christian faith that are pleasant, and most people agree with, like love thy neighbor, care for the poor, feed the hungry, stand up for the downtrodden, even love your enemy. So the things that are very praiseworthy in Christianity that the majority of people respect and like, they're happy to share that. But even then, they might not necessarily be super on fire about it, but it's cafeteria style, right? They pick what they want. But the other aspects of Christianity that society is not as keen towards, talking about the necessity of, carrying your cross, dying to yourself, believing that Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through him. Aspects of things related especially to sexual morality. A lot of times they'll either ignore these, or they'll ignore them, or that they might not even know. They might not even know. I have seen, I remember watching an exchange with Congressman Eric Swalwell and Ben Shapiro. And he was critiquing Shapiro, for Project 2025, trying to paint him as this crazy conservative. And he's trying to paint him as like this wacky person. And he's like, so, do you think homosexuality is a sin? And Shapiro's like, well, what do you mean by homosexuality? But are you asking me as an Orthodox Jew, what do I think about the Old Testament says about homosexuality? Well, yeah. And he talks about the conduct, not just the orientation. But you'll hear that. I saw Don Lemon do something similar with Candace Owens, that you'll have people who will, especially in Hollywood or in media, will embrace Christianity and they'll be baffled at the idea. How could anyone ever come to these ideas? And
that are in the Bible.
Very clearly they haven't read it. They have not read it. They're just totally ignorant of it. And they just think of them their own nice intuitions. That couldn't possibly be. That could only be something out of the imagination of a raving lunatic fundamentalist. And then they actually haven't grappled with it. I find that's very common with people. C.S. Lewis dealt with this as well when he said certain beliefs are not Christian. And he said, look, in my time, he said, for a lot of people, the word Christian just means a nice chap. And he's saying that's not what that word means.
Right. As a matter of fact, there was a time when if anyone was rude or had any kind of just impolite behavior, you would say that was unchristian behavior. Well, that's unchristian behavior. It kind of got equated with politeness and that kind of thing.
When that was a norm, which will be funny when we come back to our fourth type of Christian here at the end.
All right, so the cafeteria Christian, I'm going to check off which ones I've been in my life, and I have been this one. So I'm going to see if I've covered all four quadrants as I've gone through my journey here on the earth. But I've certainly been the cafeteria Christian, conformed to the world and morally lax. Yes. Okay. So let's go to another of the four types of bad Christian.
The next one would be someone who really conforms to what the world wants, but also claims to be morally rigorous. And some people said they didn't see a difference between this one and the cafeteria Christian when I shared it online, but I think I can elucidate it. So it's someone who tries to say, I believe everything the Bible says, and I am trying to be a holy, pious Christian. But I can live out this pious, morally rigorous faith in a way that does not offend the larger segment of society.
Oh, okay.
That doesn't offend it doesn't offend everybody. And I would say that those are the progressive Christians.
Oh, really?
So these would be people who try to square the circle by saying, well, the Bible doesn't really condemn homosexual conduct. It only condemns pederasty, man-boy relationships. So you can be a Christian and still support so-called same-sex marriage. You have this on the Protestant and the Catholic side. You have dissenting Catholic theologians who will say this. On the Protestant side, there's a young man, Matthew Vines. He has a viral video on this, and he wrote a book in 2014 called God and the Gay Christian. There's many other Catholics, theologians, quote unquote, who try to push this as well. I've critiqued on my show a Catholic theologian, Emily Reimer-Berry, who says, you could be a good Catholic and support abortion as a kind of self-care. It's just like the gymnastics they will do to try to say, oh, the things that our world loves and the Bible condemns, well, the Bible doesn't really condemn them. The other thing that they will do in being morally rigorous is they will take certain popular progressive political causes and say that Christians must support those.
Yes.
And that's the difficulty, where they'll have a kernel of truth. Like they'll say, Christians have a duty to care for the environment. Well, yeah, they do. We're stewards of creation. We shouldn't just destroy the environment for no good reason. To which they'll say, okay, then that means a Christian must support my particular program to combat climate change that is going to, shut down every nuclear power plant, make everybody walk around wearing a solar-powered suit, and you can only have red meat once a year or something like that. I don't know. And then Christians, if you're a good Christian, you have to do this, or other things like that. They'll say you have to support this, when you might say, well, we can agree on the basic thing, but when it comes to the application of the principles, Christians might disagree on those things. So I find with these progressive Christians, they're very interesting. When a Christian wants to, let's say, outlaw legalized abortion, they'll say, oh, you're just a culture warrior. You don't really care about sharing the gospel. You just want to create controversy, and you want to be a culture warrior. But those same progressives will say, we need to call our congressman and pass an assault weapons ban to protect people. And suddenly, when they want to change the law to protect people, they're not culture warriors. They're just being good Christians. That's where I find it. For me, it's like, look, either both are good Christians or both are culture warriors, but don't try to act in a way where the only acceptable Christian political causes are the ones that the secular left also happens to like.
Okay, so that person is a conformist to the world, in the sense that they're perfectly comfortable with the values, but they're morally rigorous. And I do recognize that this habit of importing into Christianity moral demands that are not fundamentally Christian. That, for example, I think one actually, and I'd like to get your take on this, but I think immigration is a very difficult one right now, because I do think there is an absolute biblical mandate to love the immigrant, to care for the dispossessed, to be like, this is not a Christian option. This is not some kind of, God said this would be nice to do. Like, he's really harsh about this, that we must care for the immigrant. But then that becomes moral demands that are actually foreign to Christianity, like that the border needs to be.
I'll give you an example. So in my book, Confusion in the Kingdom, I address this, and I've addressed some progressive Catholics who, misreading older magisterial doctrine, not even that much older, but misreading Veritatis Splendor or Gaudium et Spes, will claim that deportation is intrinsically evil, that it can never be done. And they'll say you can never deport anyone for any reason, even if they are a violent criminal, for example. You can't. And they'll cite, when Gaudium et Spes talks about different intrinsic evils and it mentions deportation. But it's very clear, and I cover this in the book, I look at all the times deportation is mentioned in magisterial documents, and only twice is it related to the immigration controversy. The vast majority of cases, the intrinsic evil of deportation refers to totalitarian regimes that would murder people by just collectively sending them to an inhospitable place where they're going to die, like Siberia, for example, where you don't have to kill people in camps, you just round them up. This happened in Russia. They sent people essentially to an island in a swamp where you can't survive, and basically almost everybody died. So, that's what is being discussed here. Rather than, when you go back, you see, like, Pope Francis was asked even by a Colombian reporter, what do you think about deportation? He says, it's on a case-by-case basis when you have to figure that out. You go to the Vatican. If you illegally immigrate to the Vatican, to Vatican City, you will face a massive fine and be deported and kicked out of the city for at least 4 years. It could be longer, even like 20 years. So that's where it's like, okay, and this will get us to the other quadrants when we come back, that there's a mirror image of this on the issue of immigration. But here, they'll take, we should love the foreigner. And I would say also, like, Catholic political teaching is social teaching. I'm going to be radically honest. I'm more of a conservative politically, but Catholic social teaching, when you take it all together, I would say is a tiny bit left of center. I'm going to be just frankly honest about that.
Yeah, I think
so. There's things well, I don't know if you
I think that's right. I think that that's basically right, but it's not. But it's a tiny bit. It's not extreme, and it doesn't impose on people that you have to embrace. For example, I don't think that the Catholic moral teaching says anything about whether you have a wall or don't have a wall between two countries. I don't think it says anything about that. So I can go to Mass with you and be perfectly comfortable whichever one of those things you want. That doesn't matter. What does bother me is when people impose it and say a Christian cannot believe this on things that are clearly you can believe them.
You can believe, yeah. And our next group that we'll talk about takes the other end of the spectrum in trying to impose things, but maybe on a different political end.
All right, well, we'll come back. We've got the Cafeteria Christian and the Progressive Christian. I'm trying to figure out, have I ever been that progressive Christian? I'm going to think about that during the break. We'll be right back with the 4 kinds of bad Christians. Nobody's getting off the hook. Back with Trent Horn after this. Have you ever wondered about the mysterious, even obscure aspects of the Catholic faith? Dive into the Jimmy Akin podcast, where Jimmy brings together information from many fields as he pushes the boundaries of apologetics. Tune in today to the Jimmy Akin podcast, Mysteries of the Faith, a highly entertaining, informative, and at times humorous show that will help you grow in your faith. Visit JimmyAkinPodcast.com today to subscribe.
Lots of people have big questions about Catholicism. It needs a big book of answers, and now it's got one. The Big Book of Catholic Answers is filled with helpful replies to more than 250 questions about the faith. Questions about God, salvation history, the Creed, the Bible, the list goes on and on. Order your copy of the Big Book of Catholic Answers today at shop.catholic.com or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
What was the church like in its infancy? In a word, Catholic. And Joe Heschmeyer has the receipts. In his best-selling book, The Early Church Was the Catholic Church, he gives you the details from the historical records of the first 2 centuries of Christianity. Right now, get a copy for just $10, plus free shipping if you live in the continental United States. Get more information and order The Early Church Was the Catholic Church at theearlychurchwascatholic.com.
What is the Catholic Church? Everyone seems to have an opinion, but the church never quite fits into the boxes people make for it. In The Faith Unboxed, author Andrew Petiprin looks at some of the most common boxes people put the Catholic Church in and explains why they don't fit. In doing so, he brings us closer to what the church really is, the institution founded by Christ. Order The Faith Unboxed today at shop.catholic.com or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host. Here we are in the midst of Advent, and Trent Horn decided to get everybody's blood pressure up for Advent, make every single Christian mad, because we each fall. We're going to fall somewhere on this grid that he has made of conformity. Are we conformists or nonconformists? That's one axis of the grid. And are we morally rigorous or morally lax as Christians? That's another axis of the grid. And either of these axes we can have an excess of. We can be excessively conformist. We can have a deficit of moral of conformity. We can be excessively rigorous. We can be excessively morally lax. And so where do we fit? Where do you fit? Well, he's done 2 groups: the Cafeteria Catholics, who he says who conform to the world, are very conformist, but are kind of morally lax. Then the progressive Christian, who's also conformist with the world, likes the values of the world, but it's kind of morally rigorous and wants to boss you around about what you have to do and what you have to believe as a Christian, and having to do with more progressive causes, or kind of the worldly causes. Maybe I would describe it this way, and I'll see what Trent Horn has to say about this. But you can kind of almost go what does the world believe? I go, what's the agenda of the United Nations? If you really are morally adamant that we all have to follow the agenda of the United Nations or the European Union, you are a moral rigorist in a certain way, but you're also conforming to the world's idea. What do you think of my proxies there?
No, I think that's correct. That a lot of times you'll see, okay, where are you going to take the lead? And people will look towards figureheads in the liberal or progressive political movements and try to align with what is popular there versus what the church teaches, what Scripture teaches in guiding us, where in a lot of cases the church will give latitude on how we can implement the good. I mean, I try very hard. I can't stand it when there are Catholics who will say to Protestants, oh, you have all this chaos and we have authority in the church, so you need to submit to Rome, who will then turn around and nitpick every single thing Pope Francis said or Pope Leo said. I try very hard when I read the encyclicals to say, okay, well, what am I being called to? What is doctrine? What's a prudential judgment? And not just hand wave away the judgment, so give them serious thought. My biggest thing with Pope Francis on maybe Fratelli Tutti and some of the other issues on economics were simply that I wanted to follow his advice on economics. I just couldn't make heads or tails of what was being recommended because it's that kind of NGO sort of speak that was just very difficult sometimes for me to parse out. But otherwise, yeah, we want to make sure that we're taking our leadership cues from those God has entrusted to be our leaders and our shepherds.
All right, so we've done the conformity axis. Conformists, the hardcore conformists, people who do want to be conformed to the world, the morally lax and the morally rigorous, the cafeteria Christian and the progressive Christian. Let's get over to the nonconformist side of the ledger here.
Yes. So these are the people who say, hey, I'm a Christian, and if you don't like it, tough, man. That's how it goes. And
that's me, man. That's me. That's how I feel.
And they understand. I mean, Jesus said in John 15:19, if you were of the world would love its own. But because you're not of the world, but I chose you out of the world, therefore the world hates you. Romans 12:2, Paul says, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind. But a few verses later, Paul also says, if possible, so far as it depends upon you, live peaceably with all. So we shouldn't just be rebelling.
I hate that part, Trent. I hate that part. That's the worst part.
And Paul says, look, when you're prophesying, when you're speaking in tongues, don't act like a bunch of maniacs. People will walk into the assembly. Yeah, if Paul were alive today, there's a lot of people online who would have said he was tone policing. You're tone policing.
He is. That's right. That's what he's doing. He's tone policing, and it's good. Like, you know what? Police your tone a little bit. Like I joke about that. I hate that part because it's kind of fun to be the outrageous Christian who just is like a bull in a china shop. But like, police your tone. He said, be peaceable. And he's an apostle of the Lord Jesus Christ. Maybe listen to what he had to say about being peaceable.
Exactly. So, so I think that's important here, that the just because, if the world loves it, I hate it. That's bad because God did give human beings rational minds and a conscience. So the world does get things wrong, but people can also get things right. Like, people can come across basic moral truths. And that's why they like, in Christianity, love thy neighbor, because they say, loving people, that's a good thing. Like, it's not like a foreign thing. They're like, I never knew this before until you told me love was good.
Right.
Or that good is good. People can figure out a lot of these basic moral truths because of God put it on their conscience. But then when people just start really rebelling, they're anti-conformity. And there's two kinds here. So you have the classic example would be, so go back to the quadrants. This would be bottom right. They're very morally rigorous people. They want to uphold the Christian faith, but they also don't care what the world thinks. They just want to uphold the faith and do what they think is right. And these are the people that I would call fundamentalists, your classic fundamentalist. Now, I'm very clear. I've said before, it is not bad to passionately defend the fundamentals of our faith. That's not a bad thing. It's also not bad if you have theological views or you have different views that are contrarian or not accepted by the mainstream of the population. So, for example, take the age of the Earth. It's the scientific consensus the Earth is several billion years old. The universe is, at least 10 billion years old. That's a general consensus. But there's people who believe in young Earth creationism, that God made everything without evolutionary processes about less than 10,000 years ago. I'm not saying you're bad for believing that. That's pretty anti-conformity. The problem here is you're being overly rigorous when you say, oh, and to be a good Christian, you have to believe that.
Yeah.
When God did not require us to believe that. Or, I mean, I've seen people now, it is crazy. Like, there's going to be people who relish denying what's popular. Like they relish the fact that they say the moon landing never happened and that was faked. And they'll mock people who say, yeah, I think that happened. There's good evidence. And they'll mock people for that instead of just saying that's just their weird thing that they have. Fine. I'm like, where are you coming from? Which also I think is a very silly thing to believe, because if there was one institution that had everything to gain and had the ability to prove the moon landing was faked, it was the Soviet Union. And they clearly would have done that if it was faked, because it would have been a massive propaganda win for them. But they didn't, because we're there, and there are reflector plates on the moon, the astronauts left there, by the way, that you can aim a laser at and it will come back to you. Sorry, that's just my gripe about the moon landing right there.
No, I like it. I'm one of those wacky people that believes in the moon landing. I believe in all kinds of crazy things. When we saw that television that they landed on the moon, yeah, they were on the moon. Like I'm wacky that way.
Yeah, but that's the thing, and it's not even just the moon, but especially you'll find this in rigorous areas. They'll take things that are permitted and make them obligatory. So to go back to an example in salvation history, take the issue of circumcision. So in Acts chapter 16. In Acts 15, they have to convene the Council of Jerusalem because it tells us that some men were coming down to Jerusalem and were saying that you must be circumcised to be saved. And what's funny is we always think like, I would have never been those people. But their arguments probably were hard for the apostles to deal with, because they would have said, hey, I'm just reading the Old Testament. It says this is an everlasting covenant. Do you know what everlasting means? I'm reading it. I'm just reading it right here. Oh, by the way, what did Jesus say about circumcision? And we don't have anything recorded in the Gospels of Jesus mentioning circumcision or that it's not necessary anymore. So there would have been a lot of debate from this, of people using fundamentalist tactics. And so Paul and the other apostles had to say, no, it's permitted but not obligatory. So we know it's permitted because in Acts 16, Paul circumcises Timothy, because Timothy's father was a Greek. And so he circumcises Timothy to make it just easier to evangelize to other Jews. Just to make it easier for them to be able to do that. It wasn't sinful to do that. You could get circumcised. When Paul writes in Galatians chapter 5, he says, what matters isn't circumcision or uncircumcision. It's faith working through love. But he's saying, don't demand that other people have to do this. That's fundamentalism right there. And we see it with evolution. I've seen some people say that you cannot, a dating couple or an engaged couple cannot even hold hands prior to being married out of danger of overly romantic feelings dwelling within the person, which is just not what the church teaches. But if something's an occasion of sin for you, don't do it. But that doesn't mean that you can blanket say, oh, well, that's sinful for everybody.
Yeah, that's this actually has bothered me sometimes in some corners of Catholic media. It seems like laying heavy burdens on people because you disapprove of something. You say the church disapproves of it. And this has come from everything from what books people can read to what movies people can watch. And there are people who will say you are, I know people who are really good Christians who honestly they haven't really thought through all the subtleties of the death penalty, for example, but they just accept that the church says it's not admissible now. You can't do it.
Right.
And then other people will go, they get mad at them like there's something wrong with them. No, they don't have to have thought. They can just kind of go along and what they can accept what the church teaches. And it's, they're not obsessed about the thing you're obsessed about. That doesn't make them a bad Christian. Leave them alone. And I think that we do this fundamentalist thing is actually a pretty serious problem in online Christianity, in some of the media Christianity.
And what's amazing to me, Cy, from these people who will say, you've got to stand up to the Pope for teaching this. And they'll try to say they're based, they're trad, they're the traditional Catholics. Well, when I read what traditional Catholics actually said 100 years ago, you get something very different. So, for example, in 1906, Pope Pius X said this. He said, the one duty of the multitude, i.e. the lay people, is to allow themselves to be led, and like a docile flock to follow the pastors. So the people who, are the namesake of Pope Pius X, who, hail him as a hero, he would say, hey, wait a minute, why aren't you, what are you doing here?
Yeah,
you're supposed to be the docile flock. Now,
exactly.
It's important. It's good, though, for the magisterium to reflect and always be able to develop and understand and teach with greater clarity, because this kind of advice, while important, can lead to errors like clericalism. The idea that priests and bishops
sure.
can never. I know people who say, that Padre Pio claimed that you should never speak ill of a priest, which means if a priest was involved in abuse, you can't tell people that because you can't speak ill of a priest. And it's mind-numbingly crazy to see. And even today, you still had people who will say that stuff, regardless of the painful lesson we have been learning for over 20 years in the church related to that.
Yeah. All right. So the fundamentalist nonconformist. This person is perfectly willing to not conform to the world, but is morally rigorous. Has all kinds of moral demands. They will tell you what you should be wearing. They will,
So it's interesting, Size. While the progressive demands you do things that liberals enjoy, that God doesn't require, the fundamentalist will demand you do things that more traditionalists like, that God also didn't require. He merely permitted.
All right, so I'm going to take a break, and I'm 2 for 3. I've been in 2 of these 3 categories. I can't remember ever being a conformist to the world who was morally rigorous. I don't remember that, but I have gone through my fundamentalist stage, certainly, where I maybe was overly bitter at the world and overly morally rigorous. And when I say I went through that stage, it's not like it's over. All these things are still in me. I hate to say it, but I still got them in me. We'll find out the last of the 4 kinds of bad Christians when we come back with Trent Horn on Catholic Answers Live.
You're listening to Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
The EWTN On Demand platform features 50 new podcasts every week, as well as an ever-expanding library of audio and video content. For Catholics who want to learn more about their faith, simply using their mobile device, computer, or TV. Your favorite EWTN programs are available 24/7. Visit EWTN.com and click On Demand. EWTN is the global Catholic network.
Who was the first Catholic in your family? Were they evangelized by a friend, a coworker, a stranger? Did you ever think that you could be that person that God uses to save a soul? And that soul could save their family, their grandchildren, and generations to come. At St. Paul Street Evangelization, a Catholic nonprofit, we train, equip, and mobilize Catholic disciples to do the urgent work of evangelization. Catholic Answers is supported in part by St. Paul Street Evangelization, streetevangelization.com.
Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live. I think probably the primary reason to know the 4 kinds of bad Christians that Trent's talking about, and I do hope that will be the title of his next book, The 4 Kinds of Bad Christians. I'd love to see this in print. The primary reason to know him, of course, is so that we can avoid falling into the pits. And I suppose, Trent, there is something about especially when we first come alive in the faith, or we first feel the excitement of the faith, it's actually ours. It's not something that our parents gave us or something. We tend towards excess in the beginning because you just kind of have a fire burning.
Yeah, that happens a lot. The zeal of converts especially. So I find that cafeteria Christians tends to be more common among cradle Christians and cradle Catholics than among converts. If you think of your classic cafeteria Christian, it's somebody who grew up in this milieu. And so they, and usually they grew up in themselves in a very doctrinally loose sort of environment, where they come from that regard. I find what's interesting there is, they'll grow up in that. But some people, maybe they'll be a more progressive or fundamentalist Christian. They might have, or even our next category we'll talk about here, might have grown up in the opposite end, and then they jump over. So the cafeteria Christian, however, I'll give an exception there. Many times people will grow up in a kind of fundamentalism, or they'll have fundamentalism, realize it's incoherent, and it makes the faith look silly, and they'll think that the only alternative is this kind of bland and offensive cafeteria Christianity, and so they'll run away to the other quadrant.
All right, so we've got the cafeteria Christian who is conformed to the world and morally lax. We've got the progressive Christian who conforms to the world and is morally rigorous. We've got the fundamentalist Christian who does not conform to the world and is morally rigorous. This person's at war with the world. What about the person who is a nonconformist and morally lax? Give me an example of that person.
This is probably the weirdest, not necessarily the weirdest, it's the most interesting one on the list, right? Because why would people be morally lax? They tend to be morally lax because they want to just take the easy path in life. The moral laxity, live and let live. The cafeteria Christian loves to say, don't judge other people. So they'll say, judge not. Okay, fine. They want to live and let live. But at the same time, so normally those people who tend to be morally lax, they tend to be very conforming with others. And their tendency is to when they want to be rigorous, it's towards things the world loves, like liberal political causes. There's an interesting group of people I've been seeing more and more of lately who will be morally lax, but but in some areas. So they're actually morally rigorous in areas that are very anti-conformity. So that they will be very, very vocal in their opposition to abortion, to so-called same-sex marriage. But then they'll also have very morally lax views or morally atrocious views on things that Christians and non-Christians generally agree about. I divided this into two types, and I did an episode on this a month ago. One of them is actually a problem as old as time, and that would be the hypocritical Christian. So this is somebody who likes to say, preaching about the sins of fornication, the sin of sodomy, preaches against that, makes people upset and offends them, but then they lead a double life. They are fornicating, they're engaged in sodomy, they're having an adulterous affair. They preach about all these things, they're embezzling from the church. So what's interesting here is on the outside, they are anti-conformity, but on the inside, they're actually morally lax. And so they lead a double life. I think it's important, though, to remember a lot of people will be down on themselves, like you do something wrong and you're like, oh, I'm a hypocrite. No, if you do something wrong, you stumble, you fall into sin, you choose sin, and you repent of it and you're contrite, that just means you're human. You have weaknesses. You're in the flesh. Sure. A hypocrite is not someone who says one thing and does another. We all are on a spectrum of say one thing, do another, because none of us is morally perfect yet. A hypocrite is someone who says one thing and believes another. That is a hypocrite. The word hypocrite comes from upokrites, under the mask. There's someone who will say sodomy is wrong, abortion is wrong, but they don't really believe that. They say it because they like getting attention from that, and they live a double life in a completely different way. That is a hypocrite. You say one thing, but you don't even believe what you're selling to people. It's just an act. And I think there's a lot of online grifters and rage baiters. They'll put out stuff that makes people upset. They don't even really believe it. They just say it because they know it makes people upset and it gets them attention. So that's one of the hypocrites. The others, I call them barbaric Christians. So these are ones, like I said before, they'll be like, anti-sodomy, anti-abortion, anti-pornography. But then they will hold basically a lot of bad 19th century outdated immoral views, like saying that interracial marriage is disgusting, or non-whites are morally inferior, or that women are less human than men and women don't deserve to have the same basic rights that men have, or that Jews are responsible for all the bad things in the world. So it's that kind of stuff where they are very anti-conformity to the world, but then they'll also reject morals that even, Christians and non-Christians at this point in history, if I was debating a liberal progressive, we would both agree that racism is wrong. We might disagree about what racism is, but the barbaric Christian will say, well, what do you mean by racism? Maybe some races need to be lovingly ruled over by other superior races or stuff like that. It's wild. I'm seeing more and more of it, mostly with anonymous profiles online, but I worry that it's growing.
So I'm having a hard time. This is the hardest one for me to get a beat on. So this person is nonconformist to the world, but is actually putting a false face to the world. That would
be the hypocrite.
Okay.
So that would be the hypocrite. The barbarian is someone who's like, yeah, they will do things that makes the world mad by upholding controversial Christian doctrine.
Right.
Like I said, on life or sexual issues.
Yeah.
But then they will make the world mad by rebelling against really general moral truths that everybody, including Christians, agree, like the wrongness of racism, for example, or sexism. Or another example would be this. To circle back to the beginning, Si, you talked about how there was a time if you were rude, it's unchristian, like they're synonymous. I find with these Christians online, I call barbaric Christians, people they disagree with, they will speak in the most vile, insulting, abusive manner possible, and just think that that's perfectly fine for a Christian to do. And it's a kind of behavior I don't see fundamentalist Christians engage in, who are very anti-conformity, but they still uphold the Christian teaching that you ought to, season your words with salt, Colossians 4:6, Colossians 3:8, let no filthy talk come from your mouth. It's really weird. The few kinds of things that they will rebel against is more just to help them be edgelords, be rage baiters, to fill this need to be provocative. They're provocative for provocative sake sometimes, or to indulge in these anti-Christian attitudes.
All right, I may be wrong about this, but I feel like some of the hyper-masculine movement, the pro-masculinity movement, which often seems to me like just a new kind of victim class pretending that I'm not a victim. Like, say, men have been victimized, so I got to be this hyper macho thing. And I don't agree with people who say we have a masculinity problem. We don't need more masculinity if that's just some abstract thing. You're going to get yourself in trouble. We need more men who are like Jesus. Like, there's a particular kind of masculinity, and if it's in imitation of Jesus, there's no one more masculine than Jesus. He's
absolutely
tough as nails, and
absolutely
and formidable in every way, as you would want a good man to be formidable in every way. But that's not just any old masculinity that you grab ain't going to do the job for you. You better grab onto a particular kind of masculinity that's in imitation of Christ.
Right. And so I think that's the problem that we're seeing now is, and I think that there is in a modern culture, treating masculinity as if it's just a bad thing, or that being men is a bad thing.
Right.
So with the barbaric Christians, there's an inversion. So you'll have among more liberals, they'll say, oh, men are the source of the world's problems. Masculinity is a bad thing. That's the problem. What these barbaric Christians will do for masculinity is they'll do the photo negative. They'll say women are the problems in the world today, and femininity is the bad thing.
And
so we just need masculinity and manliness, and we need women to just shut up and stay at home. And when I will be honest, Si, when I see the most masculine guys I know don't have a chip on their shoulder about women. I find the least masculine people I know are the people who always talk about masculinity.
It
because
does seem to be
it comes off as it's like a coping mechanism.
Yeah, it does seem almost like a compensation in a certain way. And the comfort, the genuine comfort that Jesus has in the presence of women and that women have in the presence of Jesus would suggest he doesn't have anything to do. I mean, you see Martha and Mary are his friends. Well, that's a pretty strong word in the ancient world to say someone is someone's friend.
Exactly.
So, Trent, well, maybe if you want to wrap this up and put a bow on it in any way, we can do that when we come back. But we're also going to get to questions from your patrons, people who have supported the Council of Trent. We've got to talk about the Conference of Trent that's coming up April, 11th?
11th.
April 11th.
Conferenceoftrent.com.
Conferenceoftrent.com. Find out all about it. But we've got Trent for another hour. Don't worry. He's not going away. I didn't ask you which of these 4 categories you're most tempted to, but I might ask you that when you come. But which one? It might be barbaric. You might be a little bit of a barbarian. I don't know. We'll see.
Possibly.
All right, right back with more Trent Horn on Catholic Answers Live. Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live. Trent Horn is our guest. Yes, the Trent Horn that you see on the internet debating people, doing the Council of Trent. Now coming up, he's going to have a Conference of Trent. Well, it's not actually called Conference of Trent, but the website is conferenceoftrent.com. It's on April 11th. I'll tell you what, we're going to get into some patron stuff. Maybe we'll review how you offended every single possible Christian the last hour by dividing the Christian world up into 4 categories: the Cafeteria Christian, the Progressive Christian, the Barbaric, or in some cases hypocritical Christian, and the Fundamentalist Christian. And you said, don't go too far into the woods on any of these. And
yes,
since most of us live a little bit in the woods on at least one of them, I think you've offended all of us. In one way or another, you've offended all of us.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, it's something I always struggle with. I think it happens a lot to people. I think early on, I might have tended more towards fundamentalism. But when I try to calm down and give people space, honestly, I think the thing that people, might, especially what someone might accuse, I think people might accuse me sometimes of being like a cafeteria Christian, mildly.
Really?
Because I try very hard to not bind people. So it's interesting there is that it's kind of the polar opposite of the fundamentalist, where I might say, can I go to this wedding? My daughter's getting married outside of the church. Can I go? And I'll say, well, the church doesn't have a specific teaching. You're going to have to make a judgment call about whether it's causing scandal or whether there's, a reasonable hope that this will be your best shot to maintain the relationship and bring them back into full communion with the church. Where there's other people who would say, nope, 100%, you can't do that. You're just trying to please people, which is funny because my patron saint, my confirmation saint is St. Paul, and people accuse Paul of being a man pleaser all the time.
Yeah.
In Galatians, he says, I'm not trying to please anybody. I even told Peter to his face he was wrong. But that's why I tend to, on many of these issues, try to err towards people have liberty when it's a disputed issue. And so people might accuse me of cafeteria Christianity in that regard. Yeah.
All right. But you're not a barbarian? You don't feel like you're a barbarian?
Only on the gym mat. Only on the gym mat.
There you go. Yeah.
Even there, what's funny is like when I'm rolling with people and I do jiu-jitsu, I just play a more relaxed defensive game because I hate sparring with people who just want to take your head off. We're just middle-aged guys trying to have fun. But I mean, I'll still fight and I'll beat people and, do all of that. But I'm not trying to get in there like an 800-pound gorilla or something.
All right. Well, we got those 4. If you didn't hear them the last hour, it's it's up on YouTube and Catholic.com. You can find it there. Trent Horn, our guest. This hour, we're going to do some patron questions from people who are supporters of Trent. That's how these guys are able to do this stuff these days. We have a lot. We have horrible, terrible Catholic podcasters, a ton of them. I've been one of them many times. But we also have these wonderful, great, helpful, talented, knowledgeable, and charitable people, and Trent's one of them. So people support him to continue to make the Council of Trent. Mostly because I think they like free-for-all Fridays. I think that's what most of them are in for. But we'll get to that, Trent. But I do want you to talk about the conference a little bit. What do you got coming up on April 11th?
Yes. So we're going to have different speakers, Brian Holdsworth, Lila Rose, Evan Rogust, myself, Joe Heschmeyer. And we're also inviting over 30 Catholic creators across various platforms to be present for a conference on how to evangelize the online world. So how do you reach out to people online? How do you share the gospel? How do you share your Catholic faith? And that's where we're going to have a conference speaking to that. It's going to be in Dallas, Texas. It's going to be on a one-day event, Saturday, April 11th. Go to conferenceoftrent.com. We have over 200 people already signed up for it. Like I said, and what's neat about it is if there are, we have Keith Nestor, Franco TV. We have all different kinds of William Albrecht, all different kinds of Catholic creators, like I said, across different platforms who are going to be there. And a lot of them, they'll be on panels, things like that, but they're also going to be hanging out. You could just say hi to them. People you watch on YouTube, you follow on X or Instagram. And so that they will be there and you'll be able to meet them and meet others and myself. And just a good time to be really built up in the faith so you can go and just share the gospel and share the faith. It's a one-day Saturday conference. Tickets are on sale now for just $69, but you can get a $20 discount if you are a patron of the Council of Trent, or if you follow one of the other speakers, get in touch with them. They have a discount code, but patrons at TrentHornPodcast.com will get a discount. Otherwise, though, it's definitely still worth it. Go and check out conferenceoftrent.com, and we hope we'll see you there.
Conferenceoftrent.com coming up April 11th. Okay. I'll tell you what, I think we're going to start with I think your patrons actually sent us videos. And so is that right, Edgar? We're going to play some videos. And for those listening on the air, the audio, of course, but we'll get these video clips in, and then you can respond to them. You ready to go with that, Edgar? All right, let's get video clip number 1 from the patrons of the Council of Trent.
The canon was really big in my conversion to Catholicism. I also recognize that the Orthodox have a bigger canon than the Catholic Church does. So if the Orthodox and the Catholics were to reunify, God willing, what would that mean for the canon? Thanks.
All right, I got to apologize. I don't have a name. Do you have a name for the... so that's a patron. Oh, you have a name, Trent?
Oh, I don't know.
That's
so
right.
we're still trying out these. Right? I have names to the texts that were submitted. The clips were put online. I wish I could go back, and then I downloaded them from our folder. I don't know if I can find them.
Well,
so we'll
questioner,
just start.
Patron questioner.
Questioner.
Thank
yes.
you very much.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I don't have your name. This is the first time we've tried this with Trent, so we're rocking and rolling here. So, but go ahead and answer his question. Joe, his name is Joe. Okay, thank you, Joe, for the question. Did we just make that up? That sounds like it kind of sounds like we just made that up, Edgar. Like his name is actually Joe? Okay. All right. No, we didn't make it up. His name's Joe. Go ahead, Trent.
There's a Simpsons clip where Homer makes up a fake name. He's like, Joey Jojo. And he's like, that's the worst name I ever heard, Homer. And then the guy runs out of the bar crying, and Barney's like, Joey Jojo, come back. Yeah, so I would say, so when it comes to the canon of Scripture, so the Eastern Orthodox have a larger canon than Catholics when it comes to books of the Old Testament. And so this raises just an interesting question about what would happen when Catholics and Orthodox, I mean, ideally, I'm going to say when, I would love to see our churches, reunited, and it feels so good. I hope they play that, and Pope Leo and the patriarchs come out in St. Peter's Square and their play was at Peaches and Herb, reunited, and it feels so good. I'm going to check me on that. I think that's the case. So what do we do, though, when they have a larger canon of Scripture that they recognize? Well, and now some Catholics disagree. I might disagree on this point. I hold to the view that the Church has only infallibly defined that the books in the Catholic Bible are inspired Scripture. That is, that these books are inspired Scripture. And it says in the Council of Trent, the Ecumenical Council, it says it lists all of the books right here, Old Testament and New. Then it says, but if anyone receive not as sacred and canonical the said books entire with all their parts, as they have been used to be read in the Catholic Church, and as they are contained in the Old Latin Vulgate edition, knowingly and deliberately condemn the traditions aforesaid, let him be anathema. So it says here, what is being declared anathema would be someone who said that these books in the Catholic Bible are not Scripture, as we saw with Protestant reformers who are arguing that books in what are called the Deuterocanon, the Deuterocanonical books, what Protestants often call the Apocrypha, like Maccabees, Tobit, Sirach, saying that they're not Scripture. The Church made it very clear, no, these are Scripture. But you'll notice the Council does not say that only these books are Scripture. It just clarifies that these are indeed Scripture. So this would end up being kind of speculative. But what may end up happening is if the Eastern Orthodox came in union with the Church, these books would be understood to be safe to read. They are Christian literature. They can be held to be as Scripture, but maybe they don't have to be held as Scripture. They're safe to consider as Scripture. And the Church may recognize that these books are Scripture. Everyone must agree they're Scripture. They've always been held to be Scripture, and they were preserved by our separated brethren throughout church history. There was just a failure of the universal church to completely recognize them. If that were to happen, that's one route that might be taken. But as I said, that's still a bit speculative. But our differing canons of Scripture on the Old Testament certainly should not be a barrier towards reunification of Eastern and Western Christians.
All right. It's patron questions. Thank you, Joe, for that question. We will be right back with more patron questions from those who are patrons of the Council of Trent right after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Stay with us for more Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Magnificat. Published monthly, Magnificat features texts of daily Mass, prayers, articles, meditations, art commentaries, and more, in step with the liturgical rhythm of the Church, on the web at magnificat.com.
Mother Angelica had a simple goal when she began EWTN: to reach the world with the gospel message. EWTN News, headquartered in Washington, D.C., operates multiple global news services, including Catholic News Agency and the National Catholic Register newspaper. We've never wavered from our mandate to proclaim the truth and majesty of the Catholic faith. Thank you for joining EWTN in this mission.
Trent Horn is our guest, making everybody angry the first hour. Now he's trying to make friends with the world again this hour. I see he's trying to be popular again. Taking questions from his patrons this hour. Patrons at Council of Trent. You know what? Tell us a little bit about Council of Trent, your podcast. I don't even know how many years old it is, but it's one of the big ones now. So how long have you been doing it, and what do you do over there?
Yeah, so this is it started as an audio podcast in 2018 when people just started, audio podcasts were kind of the big thing. People just want to throw up a microphone and see what happens. And I said, yeah, people might like my takes on issues. And so I started it with just turning it on. And I think at one point I tried to do 5 episodes a week, and that really grinded me. But I got into a groove of just doing 1 to 2 episodes, like 2 episodes, and then my Free for All Friday fun content. And that was audio. Then in 2020, I started doing rebuttal videos on YouTube to different Catholic critics of Catholicism. So I started doing I did Council of Trent's YouTube channel, but it was just these rebuttals. Then I was doing my podcast episodes. Sometime around 2022, I combined them and I started scripting my regular audio episodes. I recorded them on video, I scripted them, and I still did Free for All Friday as audio, which I still do. And it's grown since then. We're nearing 300,000 subscribers on YouTube. We get about 2 million views a month on our YouTube channel. So yeah, it reaches a lot of people, and I'm very grateful for that.
Praise God for that. That is fantastic. And these folks that we have today, we have videos, and I think some of them will just be audio clips from people who are patrons of Council of Trent. And let's go to clip number 2, por favor. Here it comes.
Hey, Trent. Apologies if I don't look too good. I just came back from work. My name is Tommaso Guardavacaro. I'm just curious, with the upcoming UFC fight, who do you think's going to win, Islam or JDM? And also, as a follow-up question, who's the GOAT, Michael Jordan or LeBron? And why is it Michael Jordan? Thank you.
Tomas, thank you.
We get to have fun questions. That's what's nice about being a patron at Council of Trent. You get to ask me. I get a lot of good theological, philosophical questions. I love them. But you got to have some fun questions in there too. And I'm fine talking about UFC because I did that episode a while back. Father Mike Schmitz did an episode. It was a little controversial. He had to do a follow-up episode where he said that it was sinful to watch mixed martial arts like Ultimate Fighting Championship. And he walked that back a little bit. But I saw where he was coming from. So I made a response to Father Mike saying that, no, I don't think MMA is dehumanizing to watch. There's some violence there, but I think the violence can be justified in the name of human creativity, learning martial arts and defensive fighting fighting techniques. So I think it can be certainly justified. And the number one comment under the video is Father Mike. He wrote under it, "I was worried you'd give me a logical beatdown, but I really agree with you. I'm tapping out now." So
God bless him. He's such a good guy.
Father Mike. Oh, he is.
He's the best guy.
When I was at Seek last year, I saw Father Mike, and I went up to him, and I said, Father Mike, when are we going to do our MMA lesson? I got to teach you some fighting stuff. And he was like, oh no. But I'm like, dude, I think you'd love it, man. So our questioner, Tomas, is asking me two questions here. One is about a UFC fight that actually is going to take place 3 days from this recording, but it'll have happened a month ago since this episode airs. Jack Della Maddalena versus Islam Makhachev. And I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. And the answer is I don't know, because I like UFC stuff, but I being a father of 3 young children, with all the other things I have going on, I cannot really follow sports ball, sports kicking, sports punching. I'm out of the loop on a lot of that. When I look at the stats here, JDM Maddalena, he's younger, and he has 3 inches more of a reach for his punch. They're the same weight. They're both 170 pounds. That's welterweight, which is also my category. But then when I look at these guys, I'm like, I do not look like that at all. How are you that weight? You are just pure muscle. What is going on here? But I don't know. But so JDM has a longer reach. He's a little bit younger. But Makhachev has 27 wins. JDM only has 18. So Islam Makhachev seems a bit more experienced. After that, though, I guess there's my color commentary. Maybe I could be like, here's the day at UFC. JDM versus Islam. If I put on my old sports. You
live in the past. You're doing Howard Cosell impersonations.
Howard Cosell.
How far in the past do you live? Edgar, do you even know who Howard Cosell is? No, he doesn't have a clue who Howard Cosell. All right, he asked you a basketball question, which you are entirely unqualified to answer, but I do want to hear you.
I am no, because it's not a basketball question. It's who's the greatest of all time, Michael Jordan or LeBron James? And the answer, of course, as our questioner said, is Michael Jordan. And the answer for that is all you have to do is compare Space Jam and Space Jam 2.
Oh.
Just compare the two of them.
Oh, it's a media question. It's not a basketball question.
It just shows the difference. Also, there is just that aura, that allure of Michael Jordan. And yes, do I live in the past? Yes. Do I have a 90s Chicago Bulls poster still up in a corner of my house? Yeah, maybe I do. It makes me feel a little better sometimes about the crazy way of the world we live in. But to me, it's different. We gotta forget about that time that Michael tried to do baseball. That doesn't count. Pretend that doesn't exist. But
he didn't try to do baseball. He did baseball. He played baseball. He played professional baseball.
Let's put an asterisk next to professional there of well, he did. But yeah, so no, I would say there. But if you compare Space Jam, I just love it that LeBron James is in Space Jam 2. Although it's not really his fault, it's partially his fault. But Michael Jordan may not have been a baseball player, but he is more of an actor than LeBron James. Even though he's not great in Space Jam. Even though he is not, when the nostalgia goggles are on, you go back to Space Jam, you're like, wow. The best part of this movie actually probably is Bill Murray when he shows up. But
all right, that's not the way I thought that answer was going to go, but I'm satisfied with the answer. I will say some. I'll
give you this. I won't do Howard Cosell anymore. Should I do Harry Carey here? Hey, Si, if you were a hot dog, would you eat yourself?
Yeah. That Harry Carey died like 15 years ago. So do you know any people who are alive now?
He died 27 years ago.
Oh, he died 27 years ago. Okay.
Died in 1998.
Are you able to impersonate any living people? Like if you want to do John Wayne, that's fine with me. If you want to do Gary Cooper, that's fine. Rudolph Valentino. Okay, a living sportscaster.
Here we go. Living sports, I was watching JD fight, and you know what? It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. He puts himself out there trying to do that.
That's a former president of the United States. That is not a sportscaster.
That was Charles Barkley doing sportscasting.
Oh, I thought that was Bill Clinton. I thought that was Bill Clinton.
That was terrible.
No, you have to say something about the women of San Antonio. If you're going to be Charles Barkley, have you ever seen him do that? I'm not going to.
No, I haven't.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't have even brought it up.
Charles
is a very special person.
You've opened a gnarly can of
worms. And inside the
NBA
is and continues to be the greatest television show. All right, let's go to clip numero tres, por favor.
Hey, Trent. So this question might be a bit out there, but does the title of Mary as Queen of the Universe preclude the possibility of alien life somewhere in the cosmos? Because if the second person of the Trinity, if the Son, saved some other alien civilization, then would the alien version of Mary also be queen of the universe? And then you'd have 2 or 3 or many queens of the universe? That doesn't really seem to make a whole lot of sense to me. So, in other words, does our exalting Mary to be queen of heaven and earth and basically everything give an unduly high place to our planet Earth in the context of what is a really, really big universe that might have other places just like us? Thanks for your help.
All right, that's a great question. I love the way that it was asked and all of that. I don't know the name of that person. He didn't say his name, so we will just call him Glorp. He clearly comes from another planet. He is offended by the prominence that you have placed on the planet Earth.
The Glorpians are underrepresented here, including Glorpian basketball players who could have also competed in the Space Jam tournament.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe the Glorpians should have been invited to fight to play against Michael Jordan, the Looney Tunes stars, and the Monstars of the original Space Jam. And the Glorpians were left out because we arrogantly say, because Mary is Queen of Heaven, Queen of the Universe.
The arrogance of those Earthlings. Arrogance.
Jim Gaffigan is a bit on this too. He's like, we have Mr. Universe, right? We have the audacity to pick someone from our planet to be Mr. Universe who probably can't name all the planets in our solar system. We go through a lot of work to pick a president or the head of the UN, but Mr. Universe is selected by 5 guys from Long Island who sell exercise equipment and are judges in a competition. Mr. Universe. No, I would say that it has no bearing on the question of whether there are other forms of alien life.
There aren't. Go ahead. Did I interrupt you? I apologize.
No, now you're being a fundamentalist. Now you're being a fundamentalist.
I am. That's exactly right.
Discounting the possibility of extraterrestrial intelligent life in the universe. I'm not aware of a church teaching specifically on this question. It just hasn't been addressed yet. It certainly hasn't been addressed in an infallible way. But I don't even think it's been directly addressed. These magisterial documents operate with the assumption we're just talking about Earth and the unseen realm interacting with human beings, like the realm of angels and demons. So saying Mary's Queen of Heaven, that all that tells us is that Mary is the mother of our Lord, and so she reigns in heaven alongside our Lord. What does that tell us about other extraterrestrial intelligent life? It doesn't really tell us anything, because it could be the case that there are other intelligent extraterrestrials. Maybe they never sinned, and so they never, their Adam and Eve didn't rebel against God, and none of them rebelled against God, so they didn't need any redemption. So God never became these other extraterrestrial aliens. It could be the case God never became incarnate for them, or maybe they did sin, but God redeemed them in a different way for us. St. Thomas Aquinas is very clear that the cross was fitting, but it was not necessary. God could have forgiven our sins with a divine decree. He's God. He can do what he wants. But this was done in a graphic way to demonstrate God's a love for sinners. So God could have forgiven these other sinful aliens through another means. Maybe he did incarnate for them, but maybe he wasn't born of a woman. Maybe for those aliens, he chose to become man from the dust of the earth, which would actually be kind of poetic if their first human was like Adam, made from the dust of the earth, and the new Adam was also made from the dust of the earth and was human but did not sin. So that could have been the case. It raises a little thornier question, though, if there was not necessarily there are other aliens, but if there could be other incarnations. Could God have become man and been born of a woman? Would that woman who's his mother also be queen of heaven? Are there multiple queens of heaven, queens of the universe? Here I would say we're just getting into really speculative theology. I'm not sure. Jimmy has been asked this, my colleague Jimmy Aiken. He sees no problem with it. It seems a little odd to me if God, if he incarnates in different bodies, then the one person of the Son would exist in different bodies. But I mean, he is God, so he's all powerful. It doesn't seem anything logically contradictory in an all-powerful God doing something like that. But I would say it raises thornier questions, not necessarily about extraterrestrial life, but about the question of other kinds of incarnations. But you can go to Catholic.com and see Jimmy's full take on that if you like.
All right, Glorp, thank you very much for the question. I'll tell you what, I'd like to send you one of Trent's books, and if you just call in, give us an address, we'll have Elon Musk maybe shoot it up to you wherever you're orbiting.
Why are you pawning this off on the other Glorpians?
Oh, you think Elon Musk is a Glorpian as well?
Well, I'm not necessarily saying he's a Glorpian, but he was probably on that big panel of aliens and Men in Black and Men in Black 2.
Yeah. All right. So maybe we won't go with Musk, but I don't know who else can deliver to space these days. We'll work on that problem, Glorp. If you just get in touch with us and just beep bop bloop an address to us, and we'll get it off to you.
Nanu.
More. Yeah, we'll send it up in an egg for you. More of Trent Horn taking patron questions right after this on Catholic Answers Live. Have you ever wondered about the mysterious, even obscure aspects of the Catholic faith? Dive into the Jimmy Akin podcast, where Jimmy brings together information from many fields as he pushes the boundaries of apologetics. Tune in today to the Jimmy Akin podcast, Mysteries of the Faith, a highly entertaining, informative, and at times humorous show that will help you grow in your faith. Visit JimmyAkinPodcast.com today to subscribe.
Lots of people have big questions about Catholicism. It needs a big book of answers, and now it's got one. The Big Book of Catholic Answers is filled with helpful replies to more than 250 questions about the faith. Questions about God, salvation history, the Creed, the Bible, the list goes on and on. Order your copy of the Big Book of Catholic Answers today at shop.catholic.com or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
What was the church like in its infancy? In a word, Catholic, and Joe Heschmeyer has the receipts. In his best-selling book, The Early Church Was the Catholic Church, he gives you the details from the historical records of the first 2 centuries of Christianity. Right now, get a copy for just $10, plus free shipping if you live in the continental United States. Get more information and order The Early Church Was the Catholic Church at theearlychurchwascatholic.com.
What is the Catholic Church? Everyone seems to have an opinion, but the church never quite fits into the boxes people make for it. In The Faith Unboxed, author Andrew Petiprin looks at some of the most common boxes people put the Catholic Church in and explains why they don't fit. In doing so, he brings us closer to what the church really is, the institution founded by Christ. Order The Faith Unboxed today at shop.catholic.com or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Welcome back, Catholic Answers Live. Trent Horn is our guest. A much nicer version of Trent Horn this hour. Last hour, he put us all in our place. And this hour, he's just taking questions and answering them in a friendly manner from his own patrons we've got video clips of them, which is kind of fun. I think we've had video clips on the show before, but it's rare. But the technology is getting easier and easier. Even we can figure it out. And now I've got Trent, I've got a clip called clip number 4 for you. Do you feel like you're ready for a clip called clip number 4?
Let's do it.
Let's find out. All right. Edgar, 4, por favor.
Hello, Trent. I know you and many young Catholics are gamers, so my question is, what makes a good Christian game? And what kind of Christian game would you like to see made if you think we should make one?
If you think we should make one. All right. Sorry, I don't know. Maybe he's from the planet Glorp as well, or maybe we could just name him Joe, like we named an earlier guy Joe. But we weren't prepared on the names. Sorry, patrons. But gaming.
Yeah.
Tell us, what's the answer?
Christian gaming.
Christian
All
gaming.
Right.
Yeah.
I think to make a good Christian game, just be a good Christian that makes a good game.
Ooh.
Let's start with that.
Ooh.
Let's just start with that. It's like when people say, how do you make a good Christian movie? And the answer to me is, be a good Christian who makes good movies. Just do that. Like, if you do that, if you love your faith and it's centered to who you are, and you're just really good at making movies, it is just naturally going to come through. So, for example, I did an episode of my podcast a few months ago on it was like the top 12 films you should watch with non-Christians. Many of them are Hollywood films, but they're done really well, so they spread the Christian message better than cheesy Christian films like God's Not Dead. So, for example, I think one of the best biblical films of all time, it wasn't trying to be a Christian film or a biblical film, like a preachy film, is The Prince of Egypt. I think it was 1998. It's the animated film Prince of Egypt, which tells the story of the Passover, the Exodus from Egypt. A lot of A-list stars are in it. And it's done really, really well. But it's people who are just trying to tell a really good story. So when it comes to games, I would just say try to figure out what's a game that you can make really addicting, that's fun to play, that has Christian themes. I mean, it could be explicitly Christian, but just don't be preachy or over the top. And you might need to have a little tongue-in-cheek, self-referential humor. I had an idea for a Christian board game once, actually. It just came to me. So yeah, steal this one if someone's listening. I wanted to make a game where you start in Rome. It's called All Roads Lead to Rome. And your players, you start in Rome and you have to go around the world and cooperate with each other to evangelize the entire world. But there's a devil piece always chasing everyone. And so you have to evangelize the whole world and get back to Rome before the devil picks off each of you or something like that. That could be. There you go. That's just that's something even an atheist might find kind of humorous and fun. Don't let the devil get you. That they might even play it ironically, but it starts to sink in a little bit. So I think you can have explicit themes.
You should build, you go, you should build monasteries and hospitals and parishes as you go. See, you're evangelizing the world and you're building up all these good things that people can have.
Yeah, so I don't know if you play against each other or if it's cooperative, or if you have the temptation, you can try to win the game. But it turns out if you win it through selfish means, you actually lose the game, or I don't know. There's things you can come through, or winning is just attaining the final crown. Losing is succumbing to the devil. I don't know, but you can have explicit, or honestly, one of the best Christian movies I've ever seen is Hacksaw Ridge. So it's the story of a conscientious objector who has to fight. It was in the Pacific Theater, and he doesn't carry a gun. He's a medic who won't carry a weapon, but he ends up saved because he believes he has a particular Christian pacifist conviction. But he's not a caricature, and people end up coming to respect his Christian convictions. And he saves a bunch of men through a heroic sacrifice at the end, and he receives the Medal of Honor as a result of that. But excellent movie. I think Mel Gibson directed it. Mel Gibson is right there. He's someone. He's got some certain political, social, and theological beliefs you might need to tweak a little bit. But otherwise, though, he really seems to have a heart for the Lord, and he cares a lot about the Christian faith.
Great storyteller. He can just flat out tell a great story.
He can tell a great story. And so if you're making games, making any kind of art as a Christian, be a good Christian, have a strong interior life, then just make really good art. And if there's a Christian element that can factor into it, put it in there. But I can't tell you, just try to make it so that, try to keep the end in mind. If you want a non-Christian to play it, get inside their head to see what would be entertaining to them. And if the little bits of truth come out for them, that's great. But have them in mind when you're making this stuff.
Thank you very much for the question, Joe, number 2. And we should do a genre sometime. The best Christian science fiction movie, the best Christian romance movie, the best Christian comedy.
I do have an episode of my podcast on 7 science fiction books all Christians should read.
Is Leibowitz on there? Can't go for Leibowitz?
I will spoil. It is number 1.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to spoil your list. I shouldn't have blurted that out.
No, it's been out. It's been out. I don't care. But you'd be able to see what the other ones are. And it's not only is that one of my favorite science fiction books. This is one of my favorite books.
It's a great book.
It is a story about humanity facing near extinction because of a nuclear war. And it's divided into 3 parts. The world is rebuilt shortly after the war with monasteries keeping a social order, kind of similar to what happened after the fall of Rome. Then you've got kind of like the return of the Middle Ages and science starting to form. So like Christendom. Then society seems to be back and it's futuristic now, and we have spaceships. But one wonders if society learned its lesson. But so it's a very good, and it's a very Catholic book. You know, it's kind of hard though. The Curse of the Artist. I think about this a lot, Sai, because I have an idea for a fiction book I've had in the can for like 12 years, and I need to get back on it. But I really enjoy, like, my episodes of Council of Trent. I consider them art, and I like making them. There's kind of a curse of the artist. Aristotle, I think, said he wrote about the melancholy of the artist. Like, artists tend to be sad or depressed or introverted, melancholic sorts of people, really good artists, and a lot of them meet tragic ends, because I think the author of Canticle of Leibowitz, I think he ended up committing suicide later in his life.
I did not know that. I honestly didn't know that he
wrote like another book later that wasn't as successful.
Yeah.
Here,
he wrote one of the great
Walter M. Miller Jr.
Yeah.
He died. He was 72 years old. He was in 1996.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that, and I'll pray for him.
Well, here's what's interesting. So the book, Canticle for Leibowitz, it talks about apocalypse, nuclear war, and stuff. It also includes in the end of the book a scene about a church being bombed. Very realistic, probably drawn from his experience in World War II, in bombing runs there. I think in Italy. And so I think it said that he suffered from like post-traumatic stress like his entire life from that. But I do think, though, so thinking about that, going back, like when I do stuff or I see other artists, think about like, we think about the life of the artist, the tragic artist who's always like discontented. But I do think that melancholics, there's different temperaments, the introverted deep thinkers. It's so funny. I think they tend to be very good at art because they see a deeper aspect of reality other people miss that are superficial. They see connections people don't see. They see deeper aspects of things. And in order for them to do that, they have to feel reality at a deeper level. So they have sometimes higher highs, but they have tremendously lower lows because they see things at such a deep level and they feel things at such a deep level. Sometimes it could be more to handle. So that might be a bit of a self-confession there in some ways, but the tragedy of the melancholic, but if that's your temperament, use it for good, make art that really moves people, is what I would say.
And if you haven't read A Canticle for Leibowitz, it's one of the great works of art of the 20th century, and you'll love it. It's just a great read. I think I better take a break, and then we'll come back and get some more Joes on here with Trent Horn on Catholic Answers Live.
You're listening to Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
Proclaiming the faith, changing lives.
The year was 2005. EWTN begins celebrating 25 years with its first family celebration in Denver, Colorado. Attendees will hear renowned speakers and can visit with the network's hosts and well-known Catholic authors.
To learn more about Mother Angelica's life and the history of EWTN, visit EWTN.com/Mother Angelica.
Who was the first Catholic in your family? Were they evangelized by a friend, a coworker, a stranger? Did you ever think that you could be that person that God uses to save a soul? And that soul could save their family, their grandchildren, and generations to come. At St. Paul Street Evangelization, a Catholic nonprofit, we train, equip, and mobilize Catholic disciples to do the urgent work of evangelization. Catholic Answers is supported in part by St. Paul Street Evangelization, streetevangelization.com.
Welcome back, Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host. Trent Horn is our guest. We're taking questions from his patrons today and having a lot of fun doing it. And this one comes from someone named Isaac. Unless I am mistaken, Isaac, we are a little confused on the names today, but here we go.
Hi, I'm Isaac. I'm 17 and I live in Taiwan, and I just had a question about Unam Sanctam. I'm aware that you've touched on this in some of your previous episodes and videos, but my question is, How do we reconcile the last line of Unam Sanctam, which seems to be an infallible declaration, with modern Catholic teaching on salvation, especially as promulgated in Vatican II in Lumen Gentium, for example? Just for reference, let me read the last line of the papal bull Unam Sanctam aloud. And I quote, "Furthermore, we declare, we proclaim, we define that it is absolutely necessary for salvation that every human creature be subject to the Roman Pontiff." End quote. Thanks so much for your time and work, Trent, as always. God bless.
Sure. Thank you for the question. I would recommend, if you want a longer, more in-depth reply on this, there is an essay by our colleague Jimmy Akin, though it was written a while back when he used to go by James Akin. I think he wanted to be more, I want people to take me. It's kind of funny when you're younger, you want people to take you seriously. It's like, I'm James Akin. But now that he's older and is established and has this reputation that precedes him, he could just be kind of more casual and be like, "I'm Jimmy Akin. Welcome to Mysterious World." It's interesting how that goes for people. So there's an article called "The Necessity of Being Catholic" by James Akin that goes through this pretty comprehensively that I'd recommend here. But if you want, so I would recommend that. I think what is important to understand is that a magisterial document can speak about necessity of things for salvation, but there can be more of a development and understanding about how people are connected to that which is necessary for salvation. So it's necessary to be united to the church that Christ established, to belong to the church. However, there is a question about people. So people might say, "Oh, well, if you're not Catholic, then you're not going to heaven." There you go. But the church has never simplistically taught that just if you're not Catholic, you're not going to heaven. This is very clear in the long teaching on baptism of desire. So, for example, we might say, in order to be Catholic, you have to be baptized. Okay, if you're not baptized, you're not a Catholic. You can't be subject to the Roman Pontiff if you're not a baptized member of the body of Christ. And yet, the church has understood that people who desire baptism and die before receiving it were given burials in Christian cemeteries. They were understood to be able to be capable of receiving salvation, even though they were not baptized. And so it's called baptism of desire. And the Council of Trent, in response to the Protestant Reformation, condemned as anathema those who would say that even though the sacraments of the new law are necessary for salvation, it condemns those who say the sacraments are not necessary for salvation. Like those who say, "Oh, you don't have to be baptized, you don't have to receive the Eucharist." It condemns that as heresy, but the canon does acknowledge. Let's see if I can actually find it here. Here we go. It says, "If anyone shall say that the sacraments of the new law are not necessary for salvation, but are superfluous, and that although all are not necessary for every individual, without them or without the desire of them, men obtain the grace of justification, let him be anathema." So even there, Trent recognized that, you can't say that these are not necessary. However, there are cases where a person could be saved without them through the grace of God. And so the church recognized that after Unam Sanctam, when Unam Sanctam was promulgated, there was, for common people would believe, oh, well, there's Catholics, and then there are heretics who obstinately deny the faith. So you're one or the other. But then just a few centuries later, there's the discovery of the New World. There are lots of people who could have never possibly heard the gospel. And then understanding more during the times of exploration, even when the gospel was given to indigenous peoples, if it was given to them in a deficient way through explorers who abuse them and take advantage of them and violate their human rights and subjugate them or kill them, that it may not be received properly. And so they can't be held culpable if they do not become Christian because of this deficient understanding of the faith. So I would recommend check out The Necessity of Being Catholic by James Akin. That article is available online. And we have other resources of that at Catholic.com.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that, Isaac. Appreciate the question and the clip. And I hope we'll do this lots more times. It's fun to get to talk with your patrons. Some, however, wrote their questions, Trent. So I'm going to read some to you. And this one comes from Dan XL. Dan XL wants to know, says, "Hello, Trent. Can you help me understand the church's official teaching on predestination? I understand that the church denies Calvinists' view, but thus everyone can be saved. However, is it true that the church also believes in the elect?
Yes. Well, all Christians believe in the elect. We believe that there are people that God has chosen. There are people that God has known since the beginning of creation who will spend eternity with him. So those are the elect. We are not capable of choosing God purely on our own human ability. We're born in original sin. We are not capable of doing that. We are only capable of responding to God who chooses us. Now, there is a lot to unpack. Predestination is a thorny topic with a lot of qualifiers. And the Catholic Church has left many of the secondary debates about how predestination works, how the elect are formed, how God chooses them, has left that for theologians to debate. The Church has left many of those things an open question. If you want, the Catechism says this. It says, to God, all moments of time are, this is paragraph 600. To God, all moments of time are present in their immediacy. When, therefore, he, God, establishes his eternal plan of predestination, he includes in it each person's free response to his grace. Then it quotes the scriptures saying that Herod, Pontius Pilate, the Gentiles, people of Israel, gathered against your holy servant, but they did what you had planned or predestined to take place. And it says here in the Catechism, for the sake of accomplishing his plan of salvation, God permitted the acts that flowed from their blindness. So here's the basic thing you have to believe as a Catholic when it comes to predestination. Number one is that human beings do have free will. Human beings can freely choose to accept the grace of God or to reject the grace of God, either initially or after even accepting it initially. Humans have free will. So you have to deny especially rigorous forms of Calvinism that would say humans don't really have free will. God predestines everything that happens. Even sin technically is predestined. Though many Calvinists want to say God is not the author of sin, it's hard not to reach that conclusion if we say that God predestines everything that happens. He doesn't merely permit it. So that's why the Catechism says that God permitted the acts, like the crucifixion. He didn't put Herod or Pontius Pilate on puppet strings. He knew what they were going to do. He permitted that evil, knowing a greater good would come from it. So humans have free will. But also you cannot deny that God predestines, that he has a plan. So you can't be a Calvinist, but you also cannot be an open theist. You can't say, well, God gives us free will. He has a plan, but he doesn't know exactly how everything's going to turn out. But, he knows what he's doing. That's basically open theism. God, because it says to God, all moments of time are present in their immediacy because God is timeless. He's eternal. And he's eternal, not in the sense that you and I are, human beings aren't eternal. We have an everlasting life. We have a life that will never end. It had a beginning. Angels are not eternal. Eternal is a word used to describe them sometimes. Angels, human beings, we have everlasting lives with God or without God, but we have lives that will not end. They had a beginning, they won't end. God has a life with neither beginning nor end, but God's life has not just been going on since an endless, from a beginningless past. God is timeless. God made time. All moments of time are present to God. God contains all moments of time in one single perfect act of existence. So between those things, there's different schools of thought on predestination. So you have Thomists, for example, who will say that God predestines and chooses. Oh, the other thing you have to add in here is that God desires everybody to be saved. God wants every single person to be saved. So there's a lot of things to have to reconcile here with all of this. God does not directly will that a particular person be damned. God desires the salvation of all people. The only thing that can consign you to hell is your free choice to reject God. So then you have things like Thomism, which would say that God predestines before seeing the merits of what we'll do in life, and that the grace that predestines us to salvation is efficacious in itself. Now, some people criticize Thomism because it sounds like Calvinism, that it's a distinction without a real difference. That's one of the criticisms of the Thomist view of predestination. But Thomists would say, well, there's a difference between primary and secondary causality, that God causes everything, but he allows within that our free choices that are secondary causes. But that's part of his plan of predestination. The other end, you have the followers of Luis Molina, a Jesuit priest, who there's a view called Molinism, which would say God predestines after seeing our merits. So it's post provisa merita. That would be that God gives the grace of salvation, of final perseverance, the grace that gets you to heaven. God gives that, not necessarily to everyone, but he gives it to the people he knows will accept it. He just doesn't give it to the people who will reject it. So that involves God's middle knowledge. It allows more human freedom. But the critics of Molinism would say that sounds an awful lot like Pelagianism, that, we go to heaven, God gives us grace because we would do something good with it, like our merits deserve it. Larry, what was it? Feinberg, there was a professor at Steubenville, I want to say
Feingold.
Let's see if
Larry Feingold.
Feingold. I think it was.
Yeah.
He had Lawrence.
Lawrence Feingold. Yeah.
Lawrence Feingold had an article, I believe, on this that you may also find to be helpful. Where I think he carves out how Molinists don't necessarily have to fall into Pelagianism, but as I said, it is a very big one. Father William Most also has a view that threads the needle to prevent us from going into Calvinism or Pelagianism. Those are two authors. So a contemporary author, Lawrence Feingold, and Father William Most, an older author, I would recommend on that subject.
Dan XL, that's a big one. Thank you very much for the question. Dan, as all of our questioners are this hour, a patron of Trent at the Council of Trent, that you can find at where, Trent? Where people want to find your podcast, tell them how to find it.
You can get it on YouTube. Just search Council of Trent or Trent Horn. You can find it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Apple Music, iTunes Library. And yeah, you can also go to TrentHornPodcast.com if you'd like to join our premium community to support us there. And I think we're going to do this on a regular basis where I'll be on Catholic Answers Live. If you would like your patron questions answered on here, I would very much enjoy doing that. And so you could submit. Hopefully we'll have a recurring segment where you could submit questions there. Just go to TrentHornPodcast.com.
All right, the next one comes from Dennis, and I'll give it to you. I'm not going to give you very much time to answer it, though, because you got about 2.5 minutes. Did Judas just follow God's plan or will? So why is he damned?
He's damned because he contradicted God's will. He sinned and rejected Christ and betrayed him. God's plan includes what he actively wills, like becoming man, also what he passively permits. There's nothing that surprises God. So we say something's God's will, it means either he actively did it or he knew it would happen, but he allowed it to happen to obtain a greater good. God knew that Judas would betray Jesus and this would lead to the crucifixion and our redemption. Just because I know you're going to do something bad, it does not follow you are not guilty. Judas could have chosen to do something else, and God's plan would have been different to secure our redemption. Judas's betrayal of Jesus was not necessary in that sense. It only became necessary because God knew that's what was going to happen, and so it did happen.
Holy smokes! I gave you 2.5 minutes, and you did it in a minute.
I burned through, man.
All right, then if you can do them that fast, Sean wants to know, what are your thoughts on embryo adoption?
Oh, that'll take up all our time because I have so many thoughts. I'm still a little bit undecided. I, however, was a co-author of an anthology from the National Catholic Bioethics Center. Go to ncbcenter.org and look up our anthology. Let's see. Actually, I could probably bring it up right here. It's the second edition of it, and we included a lot of people. It's called Human Embryo Adoption, Volume 2, Catholic Arguments For and Against. So we have Father Tad Baholchek, on one side of the argument. We have, who do we have on the other side? I think Tollefson we have on the other side, or Chris Kazor. We have, must have been like 20 authors. Jimmy Akin provides the magisterial teaching, which leaves this as an open question. I kind of lean towards the view that it is immoral because only husbands should impregnate their wives, not lab technicians. But at the very least, from a pragmatic perspective, we should not be promoting embryo adoption because this won't solve the problem. It will just give a justification to create more children in cryogenic stasis, which is never a great thing to do.
Man, that was 2 really big questions in under 2.5 minutes. That was very impressive, Trent. And of course, Trent has more extensive thoughts, but he gave us what we could get into the time we had. here. Sean, thank you for the question. Thanks to everybody who called and everybody who listened. And thank you to you, Trent Horn. That was a fun 2 hours for me. I had a great time with you.
I had a great time as well.
All right, I totally disagree with you on. I'm totally with Father Mike Schmitz on mixed martial arts, but we'll fight that out another time.
We'll give you a free lesson and see what you think.
No! See you next time, God willing, right here. Catholic Answers Live.